I'm Maggie. I'm a licensed clinical psychotherapist with degrees in psychology, theology, and marriage and family therapy, a national certification in dialectical behavioral therapy, and a national certification in integrative mental health. In this video, I'm not looking to diagnose anyone. I'm only willing to offer insight into situations like these. Hello, welcome to Wednesdays. Yay! This is our first official Pivot Point Wednesday. So that's exciting, right? That's exciting. Okay, let's say hello to some people who are in here. And you all, if it gets glitchy again, like it did last time, put it in the chat. Tell me if it's glitchy, because I want to make sure that I'm not glitchy. Okay. Adric Hapoy in there first, saying Pivot Point Wednesday. Thank you so much. Adrian Hicks says, let's go. Thank you for being here. Nina Williams, my favorite auntie, says hello. Adric likes the dancing mag. Well, I hope you like the dancing Maggies. I think they're so cute, so funny. Hi, Prince Mugo. Thank you for being here. He says, let's go and turn up. Hey, chat. And got the net fire. All right. So something I'm going to try with this first pivot point. We will see how it goes. But I think what I'll do is I'll have a topic and I'll, explain the topic. We'll talk about the topic. And then after all that's out of the way, we'll have I'm calling it Let's Get Weird and talk about kind of some weirder things about the topic, and then end with something I'm calling tinfoil hat, which will be pretty deep. So people can choose to stay for the weird part and the tinfoil hat part or the whole beginning part. Totally up to you. So we want to talk about the psychology of symbols, okay? So again, have my notes in front of me. So symbols, that was the first words that ancient people used, right? You think about what was engraved into rocks, what was written on cave walls or cliff walls, what we see of ancient civilizations was symbols, right? They didn't really have written word. It was symbols for everything. So things like the sun, the moon, animals, all of that, like carved into rocks. And that gives us information about those ancient civilizations. But each one of those symbols had a deep meaning. Okay. And so when we're like reading hieroglyphs, which that's what they're called, we have to look at some of these things have a meaning attached to them. It's not just like antelope and guy with an arrow. To be able to figure out the story, you have to figure out the meanings behind it, just like words have meanings to us, right? So, a circle wasn't just a circle. Sometimes it was the sun, and that represented like life and energy and things like that. So it was a representation, right? So they were communicating their ideas, telling stories, connect with what they believed were powerful sources in nature, their spirituality or their belief systems, right? So they mattered to human beings to be able to do that because of how our brains work, how they operate, okay? We as humans are highly, highly skilled at recognizing patterns and shapes and symbols, right? We are made for this, okay? Nina's here for the weird stuff at the end. I love it. Okay, so why are humans, so adept at patterns and symbols? Well, like survival, always, right? So recognizing patterns of sound or movement or things like that could keep us safe from predators, and certain shapes and smells tell us that it's food and we can eat it. So, I mean, that's real simple. But we as humans use patterns to process information because our brains have to categorize it. And to be able to categorize it, it has to have a pattern and fit into a pattern, right? Like that's how we put things in categories and compartments and things like that, like what goes together. Okay. This is also where we can get the tip of the tongue phenomenon because like we'll be trying to think of an actor's name or something because we see a movie or something, and so then our brain tries to take that specific incident and go find the name, but that's not where we categorized it. Maybe where we categorized it was because they were in a movie with dogs that were cute, and so we put it in the category by cute dogs. Okay, but it's because of those patterns, right? Everything is a network, everything is a pattern, right? We use patterns to create meaning. you know they did this and this and this, so it means that, right? Other people did this and this and this, so it means that, right? Like we have to use these patterns and shapes and symbols to find meaning, and then we as humans have to label it, okay? Because it has to be recognizable. I mean, think of something that doesn't have a label. Right, like everything has a label. Everything's been named, right? Like we see a star that we've never seen before, and then what happens? It's immediately name it. We got to name it. You get a new pet. You have to name it. Your little girl gets a new baby doll. So what's her name? Right? Like because we as humans label all these patterns, and through the labeling, we assign a feeling to it. Okay. So all symbols that we know, all patterns that we know, all of this has a certain feeling. So remember when I talked about feelings are just information for us to be able to navigate. Okay. Just like any other sensory information. So when we're learning and we're remembering something, we have to assign an emotion to it to know, is it good? Is it bad? Is it scary? Is it right? But that means when we see something similar to it, that emotion is going to be there. Rightfully so, right? Like, think back to survival again. Did I just do that? I think I did the thumbs up. Anyway, think back to survival. If something looks like a cat, you know what I mean? Like this is before domesticated cats, right? So then anytime you hear the low growl of a cat, or you see something with whiskers, or it moves like a feline, fear, right? It's not as helpful in that way now in a modern world, but it's used way more often against us in a modern world. Prince Mugo says hate titles or labels that messes things up. Yeah. Okay. So patterns, like I said, they did this, this, and this, it helps us with our interpersonal relationships, right? Like we watch the patterns of everybody around us, from people we dislike to people we don't know at all, to our loved ones, and we learn from it. Like we're learning them, we're learning their behavior patterns, we're learning the signals that they give us, and we attach an emotion to it. Okay. So when ancient people saw the symbols, they didn't just see a shape, right? Like they saw the story, the ideas, the emotions, the connections, all of that to the world around them. So that's the psychology of symbols at work, right? Like it taps into our ability to make meaning out of patterns. Okay. So archaeologists have learned about humans from thousands of years ago from symbols. Symbols are also relatively universal, right? Like an elephant is an elephant, whether you see it in China or in somewhere in Africa, right? Like the ears are different, but an elephant's an elephant, right? Like you can tell it's the symbol, regardless of what the word is for it, right? So archaeologists learned about like thinking patterns. What did people think about? Their social cohesion, their communication styles, their rituals, their religious practices, trade, exchange, political process, language, like all of that from symbols. It goes into the symbols. So let's move forward thousands of years, right? So as time went on, symbols became more complex and eventually evolved into written languages. Okay. Written language is just a bunch of symbols that we agree mean certain things, right? Like we're taught and we agree that it means certain things. And you know what? If you guys watch the egregore video live that I had, I can't even say the word agree or agreement the same without thinking about that. That the egregore has to have agreement to be fed. So now I'm like, I don't know if I want to agree with anything. Okay, written word. Like the letter A is a symbol, right? It's a symbol for a sound, right? It represents a sound. Alone, it doesn't mean a whole lot, but when you see it, your brain instantly recognizes it as part of a system of creating words, right? The pattern, okay? That's because your brain is trained to understand the symbols from a young age, right? Like there's even memories associated with the letter A. Like it might be the first time you learned the letter A, or in a classroom, you know, where they have the alphabet up and there's an A and an apple. You might have that memory associated with the letter A. And then, of course, the sounds, the words that you can make with A, the meanings, the stories, right? All of that around one letter. Okay. Again, we are super good at this. Okay. Modern communication, science. I mean, science is all about symbols, right? Scientific symbols are kind of a special language. Um, Finance also has a special language. I don't know it, so I'm not going to talk about it. I don't know it very well. We'll put it that way. Um, but scientific symbols are like a special language that's used by scientists, right? And also mathematicians, right? Like there are symbols, the plus sign, the minus sign, division, fractions, right? All of those are symbols that explain a complicated idea in a simple way. Think about the first time somebody explained multiplication to you. Well, when we write out math problems, we don't want to write out all that whole explanation of how to multiply something, right? We just have a symbol that represents that complex idea. Okay. It packs a lot of information into a small space. Okay. So, for example, instead of writing out like 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen make water, we just scientists write H, little 2O, H2O. And it represents how that is made. Okay. Again, the brain sees the symbols, quickly grasps complex ideas, emotions, and connections without our conscious thought. Like once you learn how to read, you don't think about how to read when you read, right? Once you learn how to add and subtract, you don't think about how to add and subtract when you're adding and subtracting. Possibly if it's a complex problem, right? Sociologists identify important information about groups of people the same way archaeologists have through their use of symbols like group membership, communication, shared meaning, norms, values, power, control structure, innovation, change, all of that through the societal use of symbols. So for sociologists in symbolic interactionism, it's how people created and interpret symbols through social interactions. And it still happens to this day. Symbols gain significance through interactions with each other. Think about like labels on clothes, right? Or even certain logos, certain businesses and brands. They gain importance through how we interact with other people or how other people are interacting with us. Okay. I hope everybody's still here. Nobody's talking. You guys just want me to get to the weird stuff, don't you? Okay. The fathers of modern psychoanalytics, Freud, Jung, Watson, those people tell us that humans use symbols to understand everything in the world. Okay. So this is where like dream interpretation happens, is because we dream metaphorically, we dream in symbols. Okay. People are still here. Sweet. Um, and so to do dream interpretation, everything is symbolic because it's all metaphors, right? Freud even said things like Freudian slips are because of how we have symbols and patterns to understand the world. And then because we categorize things a certain way, we might slip and say something that we shouldn't say, but it tells us about what we think, right? Because that's where we categorized it. Jung said that symbols are fundamental to understanding your reality. Right now, just a little backstory with Jung, he came up with something called archetypes. He said we're born with kind of this blueprint of an idea of what things are, right? Like, and those are called archetypes. Like we have an idea of mother or man or woman or animal, hero. As we get older, we develop, our archetypes develop. But what he said was that we're born with the archetype, an idea of that thing, and then a symbol is what represents the archetype. Okay. So we have an archetype of woman. And then every time we see a woman, she is a symbol of a woman, not the archetype, right? But she's a symbol of the woman. Okay. Or man, same thing. We have an idea of man. And then every time we see a man, he is a symbol of man. All right. Prince Mugo's here. Adric's here. Nina's here. Sweet. Okay. Well, still in the modern age, let's talk about marketing, because marketing is where symbols and patterns are used against us. Okay. If you think about like the swoosh, an apple, the golden arches, these are symbols that are designed to stick in your mind. Okay. Marketers know what symbols can trigger what emotions. They're very skilled, right? Sales. Think about sales, right? But I'm talking about overarchingly marketing. Sales is part of marketing. But for example, they know the color red in a logo is either going to make you feel excited or hungry. So they have to pair it properly. While a blue logo might make you feel calm or make you feel like you want to trust the brand, that the brand is trustworthy. And so it's all about the shapes, the colors, all of that to evoke an emotion, a feeling, a thought. Okay. Our brains respond to those symbols with emotions first and foremost, not a thought, it's an emotion. So that influences what we buy, what we pay attention to. Like when you see a brand symbol, your brain instantly recalls everything you know about it, right? If you see the Windows logo or, the Apple, all of those things, your brain pulls all the data, right? Like it's like a button is pushed. It's the key, it's the hack, right? To get everything, right? Even, think about a soft drink, those symbols, right? So you could immediately remember the taste of the drink or how fast those shoes made you run or the quality of a gadget that you bought, right? So symbols in marketing are powerful because they shape how we feel, and how we feel enforces what we do. It's all connected. Okay. Thinking, feeling, doing. That is a feedback loop. That is the process of motivation. That's how we do things. Okay. We're either getting rid of discomfort or we're giving into pleasure. Like that's humanity. Okay. It sounds manipulative, and it is. Psychology birthed marketing in the 1920s and 30s. Okay. So this is where we get key marketing concepts of like market research, again, to tell us how to manipulate us, consumer behavior, right? Like how well is the manipulation playing into motivating to buy, and the marketing mix, which is product, price, place, and promotion. So all four of those things have to play together, and all four of those things are based in psychology. Okay. Edward Bernays applied Freudian psychology to marketing and advertising, 1920s and 30s. Like, he's one of the dudes that did this. He believed that tapping into the unconscious desires and motivation of consumers would sell products. And the interesting thing about Edward Bernays is that Freud was, in fact, his uncle. So when it's all based in manipulative psychology, the entire thing is based in manipulative psychology, manipulating the consumer. Okay. The field of consumer behavior, which is a subfield of marketing, the whole thing is psychological research, the whole thing, but they don't call it that. So here are some tactics, and I'm just going to go through them kind of quickly. But my hope is that later, when I say you can apply other things to see if these things are happening, you can go back to this point in the video. So make note of what point it is. I don't see it, but here are manipulation tactics that marketing uses. So the first one is scarcity, which is just the fear of missing out. It's going to run out. They're going to be sold out. There's only one left, that kind of thing. Like it's super rare, or everybody, it's running out. We only had 2 available, right? So you get FOMO and you want it because they're scarce. Okay. Think about Cabbage Patch Dolls back in the 80s. Okay. Second one, social proof. Like other people are doing it, and like you are a giant doofus if you don't do it. Everybody else is doing it, right? Like all the cool kids. This is why they have like Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston in cologne commercials, or they have Idris Elba in a suit commercial, things like that. Like the social proof is there. The cool people are doing it. Everybody else is doing it. And you're an idiot if you don't do it. Okay. Appeal to authority, which is do as you're told. The fourth one, foot in the door, means like, let's make some little small agreements, because these small agreements will lead to bigger agreements. And if you've already said yes several times, now we got a relationship, and it makes it hard to say no when the big ask comes. Okay. Next one is reciprocity, which is like an obligation to return a favor or a kindness. Like, hey, I talked to my manager, and man, I worked so hard and got that price down for you. Like my manager's mad at me now. Like we almost got into it. I worked really hard to get this for you, to get this price down. That they're not going to do it for anybody else. FOMO, so now we kind of feel obligated to go through with it because you did me a solid, when that's actually probably not what happened at all behind the scenes. Okay, next one. Hi, Rocky. Thanks for being in here. The next one is anchoring, which is establishing a reference point to make the product seem better, right? Like compared to, we're here. You know what I mean? Like you figure out the good thing about your product, the lovely thing about your product, and you anchor it in that lovely thing. I think about like, and I don't know if it was Pepsi or Coke, but one of them talked about uh, how crisp it was, or like how it sounded being poured into a glass, and then that became a thing, like hearing the Coke being poured and the fizz, and then people kind of caught on that, pretty much all soda sounds like that. So they had to go back and anchor that and compare it to others, they'd anchor that this is our thing. Next one is loss aversion, which is making the focus on what you will lose instead of what you gain. Okay. It's a little bit like FOMO, but it's more like, let's get rid of the discomfort. Medications do this a lot, right? Like, it's more, we're going to focus more on the pain is going to go away, not the side effects that you're going to get instead. Okay. Um, and the other way around, you don't want to lose, like, you need to buy this stock or you're going to lose money, and think about all that money you're going to lose. And then you're going to lose opportunities. And then you won't be able to invest. You know what I mean? Like, it's the constant focus is on what you're going to lose instead of what you get. You still don't know what you get, right? Politics does this, by the way, but I'm going to talk about that a little later. Okay. Next one, emotional appeals. Create strong connections with the brands, be loyal. You want to be loyal to the brands, right? Or act as a motivator of behavior, right? So there are so many people who are brand loyal. So many, right? Like, I only like this, or, I only buy, I don't know why my brain just said Louis Vuittons, because I don't have any red bottoms, I only buy Libby's peas, or, or I only drink Coke, Adrian Hicks says Coca-Cola was once the most recognized symbol in the world. Yeah, it's probably McDonald's now, because, they're everywhere. Right. So that emotional appeal, our loyal customers, our most valued, my biggest fans, it's this, we have a connection and a relationship that's so fake. Like, they don't know who you are, or they don't. And if you skipped Coke one day, they would never know. Next one is priming, which is like exposure to a stimuli that influences subconscious thought and behavior. Okay. Now, this one you've heard before as subliminal messaging. Okay. So certain music, certain colors, certain images are stimuli that evoke these subconscious thoughts and connections, right? Subliminal messages, right? You're not even aware, but they've thought of everything. Okay. Next one, there's three more. Next one is decoy effect, which is like a third unappealing option is presented that skews the perception of the first two choices to get you to choose a specific one. So, you're presented with, you want to buy a car, right? So you're presented with, your payment is $800 a month, but it's zero interest and it's short term. Or it's $400 a month, but it's 13% interest for 6 years. Right? And you can't decide, like, which one do I pick? Which one do I pick? Now, you guys don't judge me and put in here which is the better option, okay? Because sometimes you need more money in a month. So you can't decide, you can't decide. And so then they'll throw in a third option that's crap. It's just, it doesn't help either way. It's like, well, it's 10% interest for 5 years and it's $500 a month. Well, okay, well, that's still more than $300 and it's still long term, right? So I hate that one. It will make you pick which one you want, right? And generally they're guiding you, right? The third option that they give you is to guide you to a specific one. Okay. Next one is, Adrian Hicks says, in sales, we call that triplicate of choice. Yeah. See? Next one is framing, which is manipulating the context, right? Or telling the information in a way that guides a decision. Okay. Now, we get this in politics a lot, right? It's how you tell the story. It's how you tell them how they're gonna tell the story, right? Is this a happy story? Does it have a terribly sad ending? And your grandchildren will never want to speak to you again. Right? It's framing the context, right? We're setting the scene so that you know how to feel. Think about in movies, right? Like the background music, and there's these crescendos and you're getting excited and there's lots more movement. You're having all of these emotional responses to just colors popping on a screen of symbols. Okay? That's framing. Last one. Oh, Adrian says, whatever we wanted you to choose, we would put in the middle. See, good idea. It was all in a way to get you to choose, right? Illusion of choice, right? Okay, gamification. That's the last one. Turning it into a game to make it seem like it's not just purchasing something, right? The competition, oh, you've won, right? Think Publishers Clearinghouse, you guys remember that? Is like you enter to win, but the way to enter was to buy a bunch of magazines. But you feel like you're competing, right? Like I'll never win if I never play. The lottery, right? Like, here, lottery, take my money while you give me pieces of paper because I'm competing. I got an entry. You got to play, right? This competition. But it's a false reward that just leads to more money spent. And the greatest example of this right now is in-app purchases. The entire thing is to get you to give them money. So they just set up this little game thing and everything you need to do costs money. And so you have in-app purchases. Temu does this too. It's a shopping site, but you can win stuff and you can play games and you can do all these things. So you get credits, but then you still got to spend money to use the credits because the whole point is get you to spend money. Okay. All right. Look at that. 35 minutes in, and it's time to get weird. Let me pull this up. All right. Let's get weird. And I'm hoping let's get weird. Let me make that a little smaller. Takes off. Okay. All right. So this is where we're going to get a little weird. All right. Talking about symbols still. Okay. Everybody with me? Are we all down? We're going to do it. Excuse me. Maybe I'm not supposed to talk about it. Okay. Symbols. Alchemy is very important, right? Because alchemy is sort of like the foundation for a lot of the symbols that we use to date. Okay. A little drop of water popped up and hit me in the nose. Okay. So alchemy started in ancient Egypt, India, and China all around the same time, which was like 300 BC. So it was a long time ago. Okay. They said the universe is made up of 4 elements: water, fire, earth, and air. Okay. So they were the first ones to talk about elements. Okay. And the alchemists, hi, Chef Mike. Oh, Adrian says the most recognized symbols are the peace sign, the cross, and Coca-Cola. Okay. Alchemists. All right. So the alchemists started working with elements. So they were the first one that talked about elements. And they said, we have 2 goals, and we're going to mix those 4 elements together, earth, fire, wind, and water, for 2 things, right? Number 1, we want to figure out how to turn base metals into noble metals, which is like turning lead into gold by, reactions. These are the first people to ever think about this stuff, guys, and 300 BC. Isn't that wild? So they're like, we can figure out how to create these reactions to turn base metals into noble metals. Okay. Goal number 2, again, remember they only had 2 goals. Goal number 2, create the philosopher's stone. Now we hear about this in mythology, but this is an actual thing, right? Like alchemists in these 3, you know, places in the world where there's a lot of science and philosophy and things just blossoming and blooming, said, we're going to find the philosopher's stone. Now, a lot of times when we think about philosopher's stone, again, I don't know why they called it a stone, we're thinking of a rock, right? The philosopher's stone was essentially some sort of chemical reaction, some way to combine different elements to create this specific thing that grants immortality and perfect health, right? So their 2 things are, we want to turn things into gold and we want immortality and perfect health. Okay? That's what they wanted it. Okay? These alchemists developed complex laboratory techniques and compounds that we still use to this day, right? Alchemy turned into chemists, right? Now, chemists branched off, part of it branched off into pharmacists, okay? In fact, you think maybe in your great-grandparents or great-great-grandparents, they referred to the pharmacists as the chemists. They're going to go see the chemist, okay? So this is why this is talking about the symbols of the alchemists is very important. Isaac Newton, okay? Like this is the stuff they created. Alchemists were really adept at using symbols, and it was not only integral, imperative, and mandatory to use symbols for their work, right? They needed secrecy, obscuring knowledge to the uninitiated, because they didn't want them to try these experiments untrained, right? But also because the alchemists were persecuted, right? A lot of this seems sort of anti, religious doctrine of the day, okay? And alchemists continued to be persecuted long through Christianity, trying to take over as the religious dogma of the day. Universal communication across different cultures and languages, right? Because I talked about it's picking up in 3 places practically simultaneously, and they're able to convert, like send letters back and forth, send things to each other. Ancient Egypt, India, and China. Okay. They're sending letters and directions and books and things back and forth to each other, utilizing these symbols. They don't have to speak the same language. They don't need to, right? Symbols help to denote complex processes and ideas, kind of like we talked about, plus sign, multiplication sign, without having to write the whole thing out. And it helped with memorizing the processes, okay? And they were the first to use symbols for the elements, which we still do now, for processes, and for philosophical concepts. So that was the first time symbols were used for a state of thinking or an idea or some philosophy that someone might have. Okay. And they are the ones that first came or gave us what we call modern scientific inquiry, right? They identified the elements. They did, it was very, very important. And it's interesting that nowadays, when we talk about alchemy or alchemists or things like that, people almost take it as like witchcraft or pagan, or when they were none of those things, right? They were the first chemists. But much like all scientists for a very long time, up until the Industrial Revolution, they were also philosophers. Like I've said before, Pythagoras, father of mathematics, had philosophies about the nature of life, right? And his philosophies were pretty ontological. that we know life by comparing things together, and then it is what it is. Okay. So, next one, we're getting weirder. It's just going to keep getting weirder. All right. So, words actually have vibrations, right? Not only do symbols evoke emotions and instantaneously bring up memories, words have vibrations. So, words, like anything, carry energy. Like everything is energy. And we've talked about this before. Of course, there's a frequency because we hear the frequency waves. Well, what is frequency? It is energy. Okay. So when we speak, we emit vibrations that can affect both the speaker and the listener. So if I say a particular word, those waves also come back, right? Like we don't just aim them. We don't have a megaphone. We put it out, and then we're both affected by the vibrations of the words. Principles of quantum physics and the understanding that everything around us, including words, has vibrational frequency is integral. Okay, integral. Okay. I always say integral, and then somebody else I know says integral. I don't know how you guys say it. Okay, so this one is really interesting. This is studies that I have loved to look at, and so you guys feel free to look. Dr. Masaru Emoto, who was a Japanese scientist and author, conducted groundbreaking experiments on the effect of words on water molecules. So, does it affect things at a molecular level? In his experiments, Emoto exposed water to different words, different sounds, music, different types of music, and then immediately froze the water to look at the crystalline structures that formed in the water. Later, there was experimentation actually done on tears in the same way, and the emotion could be identified by the crystalline structure of the tear. Am I so mad that I'm crying? Am I sad that I'm crying? Am I so happy that I'm crying? Am I laughing so hard that I'm crying? Am I so proud that I'm crying? Right? And those tears were frozen, and the emotion could be identified just by the structure of the tear. Okay. So, Emoto's experiments, the power of positive and negative words. That's what the experiment is called if you guys want to look it up. Okay. Hi, Chef Mike. I think I already said hi. Hi, Abuki Cabal. Hi, Black Tom Brady. Black Tom Brady says, do you know who young Pharaoh is? He was one of the first to put me on to a lot of this stuff. Man, it's crazy how much little things that we don't even think about does matter. He used to have a bunch of lectures. No, I haven't heard of him, but I will look him up. It's apparent we have similar interests. Okay. Dr. Emoto's most famous experiments involve placing labels with words such as love and gratitude on containers of water. He found that words of positive energy formed beautiful, intricate crystals. Wait a dang minute. He wrote it on a label and stuck it on the water. And it still worked. It wasn't just speaking words into the water when you're feeling a certain thing, and then freezing it. Now it was just write it on a little label, stick it on the water, and it had the same effect. So the words themselves have energy. The words themselves have frequency. He found that words of positive energy formed beautiful, intricate crystals, whereas negative words like hate and anger resulted in deformed and chaotic crystals. Now, this is affecting the molecular level. So think about when we are feeling hate and anger, when we see hateful things, when we hear hateful things, when we read hateful things, when we other people are saying hateful things, it literally affects us at the molecular level, right? Like it ages you. It deforms things. The molecular level becomes chaotic. So I have this quote up there. Every word, and doesn't say spoken, right? This is every word. Every word carries an energy that can be sensed, regardless of whether you're thinking it, speaking it, hearing it, or reading it on a page. A lot of elements impact a word's energy. So isn't that interesting? Right? And this is why I say it's so interesting, because just writing it on a label and sticking it on there changed it in a predictable way, in the way that that emotion should change it, right? We also have the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which is where language also influences our thought, okay? So there's been many studies about this hypothesis, but the studies demonstrate that the language we use affects our cognitive processes, right? Which, like memory, how we're perceiving things, and problem solving. Remember how I said I've said this a few videos ago, not in this video, but what you think about is what you see. It's more than confirmation bias, right? Like if I'm constantly telling myself that all cats are black, I'm literally going to start seeing black cats, and I'm going to start ignoring cats who are not black. I just won't see them. Okay. I won't remember them. So the language that we're using, right? If I say everybody hates me, then, that's what I'm going to see. And then I'm going to respond to people as if they hate me. And then people are not going to be very nice to me at that point. And then it confirms that people hate me. You see, it's this feedback loop, right? So just the language that you use affects how your brain operates, right? In affective neuroscience, right, an entire field says that positive affirmations activate reward centers in the brain. It's like you just gave yourself a reward by saying something positive about yourself, or hearing something positive about yourself, or reading something positive about yourself. It literally activates the part of your brain that says you just got a reward, right? It's a positive thing. And in learning and behavior, if we get a positive thing, we want to do more of it. And so changing our thinking to that then makes that start to come true. Okay. Also in affective neuroscience, self-criticism activates error detection processes, meaning if I criticize myself, then I automatically start feeling like I made a mistake, or I effed up, or I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, or I'm going to mess it up eventually, or I always get it wrong. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, instead of activating the reward center, it's like, look for the problem that because you effed it up, and evokes negative emotions along with it. And then that goes in a feedback loop. I'm so concerned that I made a mistake, and I'm feeling so bad that now I'm not paying as close of attention. And so I make a mistake. And so I've just confirmed what I thought, and it keeps the cycle keeps going, right? Okay. Adrian says integralus, not integral. It's integralus. Hi, Leon. Thank you for being in here. I lost my slides. Okay. So I hope that that's interesting to you guys, that literally when we talk about how important symbols are to humans and how affected we are by symbols, it's huge. Again, just wrote the words on the label and changed the molecular structure of the water. Okay. The most enduring hypothetical treatment in not hypothetical, hypothesis. The most enduring treatment in psychology is CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, okay? Because it works and it's been proven and it's evidence-based and it's validated and it works all the time. Why? Cognitive behavioral therapy means what you think and what you feel affects what you do. And so if you're thinking stuff that's not quite right, it's going to change your emotions and your behavior. If you're doing stuff that's not quite right, it affects how you feel and what you think. Like that is the feedback loop because our thoughts and our feelings shape our behavior, and then our behavior confirms our thoughts and feelings. And it just continues on this loop, right? This is how we work. This is how humans are. But the problem is that we don't understand everything that's affecting our feelings and our thoughts. And then, like for boys and men, there are massive attempts to separate them from their feelings, right? And in the same way, girls are sometimes told, don't worry your pretty little head about it, or told that they're not analytical because boys are analytical, right? It's more the boys being separated from their emotions, especially in this day and age. Girls are sort of guided towards STEM and going to college and things like that. But for a while it was like that. Boys are still, don't cry, what are you crying for? I'm going to give you something to cry about, or, called gay or called Sally, or, they're shamed out of feeling their emotions. So if there's just a blank there, like, what you think and what your behavior is, blank, and this is what I think and that's my behavior, blank. Like, you literally have no idea everything that's affecting you, right? We're also all pretty much on autopilot. So we don't think about what we think very much. And we don't think why we think what we think. So, and you don't know what you don't know until you don't know that you don't know it. So all of that this is kind of like a spoiler alert to the weird stuff. Okay. It's going to keep getting weirder, guys. All right. Sacred geometry. Have you guys ever heard of this? Sacred geometry? Hopefully. Well, you know what? If you haven't, it's going to be awesome. Okay, so sacred geometry. So if you look at those symbols that are across the bottom, Metatron's cube, the eternal knot, the flower of life, the torus, all of these and many, many other things are considered sacred geometry. Sacred geometry is the ancient wisdom that certain geometrical symbols, like in shapes and ratios in certain ways, have sacred or powerful energy. Okay. Now, hopefully we can all dig it because we just saw that words written on a label have certain energy. So of course these little symbols can have energies, right? In sacred geometry, they feel like these geometrical symbols are the foundation of physical matter. Okay. Sacred geometry was used for ancient Egyptian, Indian, Greek, and Roman architecture. And it was the basis that they used to understand the universe, right? Like this is holy math. That's kind of a fun way to say that. Okay, so sacred geometry is made through vibrations and frequencies, right? So it does have power, right? So if you look up in the corner, there's something called cymatics. Okay, you see the word cymatics. These are fun videos to watch. In cymatics, this thin metal plate is set, and just a thin layer of sand put on top of it. And then a frequency, a certain frequency, like 128 hertz or 432 hertz, whatever, is passed through, and each frequency has a pattern. So those all those patterns you see up there, so that's super cool in and of itself. But then as they're doing cymatics, they also see that this looks exactly like a turtle shell. This looks exactly like a seashell. This looks exactly like how leaves look, right? And so then they're like, those patterns are created by a certain frequency. Okay. When they first started doing cymatics, they just took like a bow and ran it across the metal, and it made the pattern. But later they just like hooked it up to electricity to run the hertz through it. But the sacred geometry is where we get acoustics from, right? It's where we get the science of sound from, was originally sacred geometry. Okay. So like the one that's called the flower of life, that is 128 hertz, right? That electrical frequency ran through the metal plate every time, no matter what, always makes that pattern, always, no matter what. Okay. And of course you see the patterns up over there and different things. Like one looks like a spider web, but that's a frequency, right? Some of them look like mandalas. There's some that look like tortoise shells. You know what I mean? So um, there have been studies that show that vibrations of specified hertz can, I was just reading a study today that was new. Specified hertz can stimulate endothelial cells, activate protein kinases, stimulates nerves with vibratory analgesia and oscillatory coherence. That just means it relieves pain. Okay. So certain frequencies, being exposed to certain frequencies, relieves pain. Okay. Activates the muscle stretch reflex, elongates the lifespan of bone cell progenitors, meaning that like all the building blocks of bones, it keeps all the building blocks alive longer by being exposed. It has positive effects on bone ossification and resorption, like how fast it's cycling through on your bones. Again, keeping your bones strong, essentially, both of those. And has anabolic effects on spine and introvertible discs. Like it helps your back. Okay. That may sound super weird, right? Like, okay, so we're treating our problems by passing, or exposing ourselves to a certain hertz of something. Okay. That may sound kind of weird, right? Adrian says, is this like the golden ratio? I don't know. I don't know. I've heard of the term golden ratio before, but I don't know what it is. And Nina loves this. So now I got to look real quick. Hold on. I got to know what the golden ratio is. And I'm probably going to read it and go, oh, yeah, I didn't know when that was. So the golden ratio is in mathematics, two quantities are in the golden ratio if their ratio is the same as the ratio of their sum to the larger of the two quantities. Oh, A plus B equals A plus B. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I would look it up and look at the golden ratio in comparison to sacred geometry. There's probably something there, honestly. Now, as weird as all this may sound, okay, we have in medicine something called histotripsy, and it's been studied for a while. There was a guy named Royce. I don't remember his name, but He studied treating diseases, like actual diseases, including cancer, by passing frequencies through the body. Um, Now, interestingly enough, I can remember hearing a few years ago, 2 to 3 years ago, about a woman, who's a Black woman, who discovered that she could obliterate cancer or tumors by passing a frequency. Now, the interesting thing is, when I wanted to talk about this today, I can literally find it nowhere. I'm hoping it's not a Mandela effect. Um, there is a young Black woman who uses lasers in much the same way to obliterate cancer cells, and it's working and it's becoming approved. So excellent for her. But I'm trying to find this other woman. She was like in her 40s, was not a doctor. Um, yeah, the young woman who's using lasers, her first name is Naisha, and I can't remember her last name for some reason. So I apologize, Doctor, um, whatever your last name is, and I'm so sorry, I don't remember. Um, However, um, when it was first made, when this original woman was doing it, when Royce Royal was doing it, they were laughed out of medicine, right? Like there were smear campaigns. You had big pharma like suing them for every little thing that they did because it's just bad medicine and it's going to cause problems and it's blah 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 blah. Well, guess what? As of October 2023, so it just happened, histotripsy is FDA approved for use on cancer cells. And what they do is it is targeted frequency. So now it's a real thing, right? Because they said so. Also, because it went through universities and big pharma. So now it's approved, FDA approved. No chemicals, no medicines, no chemo. You go in, if you look at the picture on the histotripsy, they just have this machine. It's almost like getting an X-ray, and they just pass frequency through where the cancer cells are, and that frequency just makes them go, and it just obliterates them. So FDA approved as of October 2023. Now, does that mean that your insurance is going to pay for it yet? No. Whenever something's this new, it takes a while. I mean, there may be one insurance, I don't know. Blue Cross Blue Shield is like a huge provider, maybe them. But it takes a while for insurance companies to get on board. So it would be, if you needed it, you'd be paying outright. But just so that you're there. But again, that's part of sacred geometry. That's part of acoustics and cymatics. That certain frequencies affect mass in patterned and predictable ways. Now, this histotripsy is not like they're using any old hertz, right? There are specific ones that obliterate, right? So that means there are specific ones that create, would there not? Okay. Whew. All right. So that's the weird. Okay. Now we're going to get into the tinfoil hat. Okay. Adrian Hicks says it's a ratio that they use to denote beauty or attractiveness. I have heard of that where it's like, but it's the same as the mathematical, like A plus B are the same as A plus B. Like it's perfectly symmetrical. Isn't that the goal? And then there's some like there's like a triangle that comes down too. So it's like a circle, a triangle, some square. We're going to see that symbol here in a little bit. So yeah, I have heard of that. Leon says nice women have the greatest frequency of really Leon. What are you being nice to me for? What do you want? I want nothing. Just be nice to be nice. Yeah, that probably does feel good, actually. Now that I think about it, I thought we were being dirty. Yeah, Adrian. I'm catching up. I'm saying the things you've already said. Facial symmetry. Yeah. Royal Rife. Thank you, Rocky. Not Royal Royce, Royal Rife. Yes. And boy, were there smear campaigns about that man. Yeah, Chef Mike says divine symmetry. Yeah. So I would assume it's probably part of sacred geometry. I didn't look it up. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, so we've finished the weird portion of our discussion. So if you're still here, that means you are consenting to the tinfoil hat. Okay. Saying somebody is wearing a tinfoil hat or is a tinfoil hat means that they have paranoia or a belief in conspiracy theories, especially involving government surveillance or paranormal beings. Originally, the term referred to the practice of wearing headgear consisting of metal foil to block mind reading. By the way, metal actually is a conductor, so they were doing the opposite thing of what they should have done. Anyway, Julian Huxley, brother of Brave New World author Aldous Huxley, coined the concept in his 1927 work, The Tissue Culture King. All right, so you all are consenting to moving into the tinfoil hat. There we go. We're still talking symbols though, guys, but we're going to use money as an example. Now we could get into, I could do a whole 3 more hours on stuff, on symbols in this section, but we're going to use money. Okay, because money is recognizable. You all recognize money. And most of us recognize that it's just weird as heck that there's a pyramid on an American dollar. And we get all kinds of answers for that, right? So let's talk about some of these symbols. The Eye of Providence, which is what they call that the small triangle with the eyeball in it. Okay. They call that the Eye of Providence. Now, that is a Freemason symbol, period. I will tell you if there are things that are not proven. That is the Eye of Providence. It's a Freemason symbol dating back to 1797 with Thomas Smith Webb. Okay. In 1884, even, Harvard professor Eliot Norton wrote that the reverse of the Great Seal of the U.S., which is that, the whole circle, that whole thing, was a dull emblem of a Masonic fraternity. So it's well known that that is Masonic. Okay. All right. Now, there are some statements that are on money that are in Latin. Again, why are we speaking Latin on American money? We speak American English. Weird. Okay. So the first one is Annuit Coptis, written on money. Okay. You see it on the top of the back of the Great Seal, where the pyramid is, written at the top. Annuit Coptis. What that is stating is he has favored our undertakings or he approves of our endeavors. So agreement. And then we, on the bottom, Novus Ordo Seclorum. That means new order of the ages or new world order. I got to save the camera. Come on. Come on. The Roman numerals that are on the bottom of the pyramid is 1776. It's not anything weird with that. That's when, the United States had to have its own money because we weren't using British money, right? Now, pyramid. Why do we have a pyramid, right? Now, I will tell you, the Masons have always used Egyptian iconography in their symbology. So having a pyramid is definitely part of Mason symbology, right? And you'll see that I put another coin up there, or another seal up there that has the eye, but not in a triangle, right? And it says Deo Favente Perennis, right? And it's God's favorite year after year. And then also put up the symbol for Masons, right? There's an eye in the middle, there's a triangle, right? Like there are some similarities for the literal symbol of the Masons themselves, but all these other symbols are part of Mason symbology. So the split pyramid makes sense, right? Because the Masons like pyramids. However, if you look below, in alchemy, the alchemist's symbol for air was a broken pyramid. Interesting, right? And we just talked about the principalities of air that are in high places. Remember in the egregore? If you haven't watched the egregore, you might want to go back and watch that. But the broken pyramid is the symbol for air. Okay. So he approves of our endeavors of the New World Order. And we have air. All right. And we have 1776. Cool. Now, the eye. Some people think this is the eye of Horus, another Egyptian iconography, right? And Horus was an egregore, remember? He was always watching. He was a watcher. He was always watching and paying attention to what's going on, right? Not always in a negative way, right? It wasn't like I'm watching you and, I'm phone tapping you and put cameras in your house, right? No, more like Santa Claus, okay? Like watchful, a watcher, right? So some people think it's the eye of Horus, or like the eye of the Christian God, right? Which again does not make sense to be on top of a pyramid. Christian God has nothing to do with pyramids in the top of a pyramid, okay? But some people say that, right? Now, I submit, again, because alchemists and the Freemasons and a few other people were all working in concert together. This is why I threw out the alchemist symbol for air, okay? Utilizing Egyptian iconography, which the Masons do. I submit that the eye is actually Regulus, okay? You will see some reguli down there. Now, the symbol for Regulus is the eye with the eyebrow, okay? Also, Regulus is a star that is in the Leo constellation in the part that looks like a fighter jet or a missile or a bomb. So that is also Regulus. The United States also created missiles and bombs and named it the Regulus. And it's all named after Regulus, right? Regulus, I think it's Marcus Attila Regulus. Okay, Attilas Regulus. Now, he was in the bloodline of the Attilas. Think Attila the Hun. Okay. Regulus also sometimes means petulant king, if people want to translate it, but I submit Regulus. Regulus is a man who invaded Africa. But the Regulus symbol, again, because it's alchemist, remember, is the symbol for a mixture of metals that makes a new element, like the Philosopher's Stone, right? So a Regulus is a mixture of metals. So you could have an iron Regulus, a lead Regulus. It's a mixture of two metals, okay? So I submit that when we say, want to say it exactly, he approves of our endeavors, the New World Order, and we're looking at mixing chemicals together towards that new world order. Okay. I told you I was going to get tinfoil hat. I hope you were ready. Oh, Rocky says smear campaigns against radium. The alchemy symbol for radium, you need to look it up. You guys need to look it up while we're doing this or right after. And replay gang, look it up. You're going to be shocked. Okay. Nina's got her tinfoil hat on. Adrian says, hey, look, it's the Volvo iron ore symbol, also the male symbol, but who's counting? Yep, we're going to get there. You're working ahead of the class. Okay. All right. So we also have e pluribus unum, right? Out of many, one. That's what e pluribus unum means. Out of many, one. Now, when they were trying to figure out what the Great Seal of the United States was going to be, they had an artist there whose name was Du Cimetière. Okay. He submitted a design and wrote on it e pluribus unum. And it contained a shield with 6 symbols. So you see it right under the word money. You see the front side of the Great Seal. Right beside that is Du Cimetière's design. And that was the first time e pluribus unum was spoke about in going on the Great Seal, right? So Du Cimetière's design had a shield with 6 symbols on it. Okay, that's what the 2 people in the middle are holding. It's probably so tiny you can't see it, but there's 2 people in the middle holding a shield, right? There are 6 symbols on it representing the primary former nations: England, Scotland, Ireland, France, the Netherlands, and Germany, from which the colonists now living in America came from. His original pencil sketch even included the 13 abbreviations of the newly formed colonies. So you can see those in the center ring. There were no plans. Oh, I'm sorry. 13 abbreviations of the newly formed colonies coming out from, right? Out of many, one. And surrounding the 6 nations. There were no plans to include a symbol for the 20% of the population that came from Africa or had African descent, however, and nothing has ever been added to e pluribus unum. It always was out of one, many for the original 6 nations. And e pluribus unum, still on the money. Okay. Then we have an eagle, right, on the front side of the seal. Right? Now, both the front and back side of the seal are on money. Okay. The eagle, again, has been proposed to be Horus, who was also called the falcon-headed sky god. And so right underneath the front side of the Great Seal, where you see the eagle, you can see how similar, even the circle above the head, how similar that is to the sigil of Horus. Okay. So again, could be Horus. No reason why it's not, right? That they came from that. However, here's another layer to that. There were ancient Egyptian eagle iconography, like very popular to use eagles in Egyptian iconography. But when the Romans came in 300 BC, they appropriated all of the eagle iconography. Did you guys hear the dates that I said? Remember when I was talking about Regulus? Guess who went in and appropriated all of the eagle iconography in 300 BC? Regulus. Okay. Interesting. All right. The eagle in alchemy means, again, alchemy, masonry, all of this is going on at the same time, okay? The eagle in alchemy means to transcend from a low state to a higher state, both spiritually and physically. So I don't know what that means. So some more stuff, right? The 13 stars above, right? You see the 13 stars above the eagle. Could be, they say it's the 13 colonies, but why is it in the shape of the tree of life? Do you guys see that? You mean to go back a slide? So look at The 13 stars in the circle, look at the shape. Flower of life. I'm sorry, I said tree of life. The flower of life. Look at the shape. Why that shape? Okay, but the 13 stars could be the seal of Solomon, Star of David. It could be alchemical hexagrams, which is just like the harmonious balance of all things. Who knows, right? The eagle is holding 13 arrows in its right talon. Now, what they say is, it has an olive branch in one talon and it has arrows in the other talon, which means like we're ready for war and we're ready for a peace. Okay. Could be. The 13 arrows could be alchemical iron, which you see there, that arrow, right? Which also denotes male power, because differing forms of iron. So when that one that looks just like an arrow, that is ferrous iron. All other forms of iron look exactly like the symbol for males. Okay. So if it is iron and it's an eagle who is transcending, could denote patriarchy. You know what I mean? Denotes male power. Also denotes Mars, the god of war, right? So that's still that we're ready for war. So I could be getting too deep. I don't know. You guys figure it out. Holding olive branches in the left talon. The olive tree is the tree of life in alchemy. It is very significant to alchemy. The olive tree is. It denotes peace, harmony, and tranquility, which is where we got olive branch from. And which is why, like, when they edited the Bible during Noah, they brought back an olive branch. Okay. Also on money is, and there's a picture there of olive tree worship. The Druids also worship trees, mostly oak. Didn't necessarily worship. They viewed trees as balance and harmony. Like you have all these roots under the earth and it looks the same as the branches above. It's harmony, it's creation, it brings forth life. It gives food to humans. So the Druids really dug the oak trees, right? Also on money is the Federal Reserve System seal. We can get into that at some point in time. That would take a long time. And a whole bunch of various dead presidents. So, there's tons to look at if you guys want to look at more of these things. The most important parts are, the Eye of Providence and the Great Seal. Those are big things to really look at and question because, let's go back to symbols manipulate our behavior through manipulating our thoughts and emotions. So then we have to think about, why are the symbols there? Not just the super shallow meaning of the bald eagle is our bird and olive branches mean peace. Or why is there a pyramid on there? Because it's powerful. I literally had somebody tell me that once before, because it's powerful. Still makes no sense. We still have it. Okay. The only English that's on money is "In God We Trust." Well, I mean, on quarters and stuff, you have the state, you know what I mean? But as far as phraseology is "In God We Trust," and think back to that agreement notion, right? Hi, Snowman. Thanks for being here. Rocky says the symbol for radium is Ra. Keep going. Look at the alchemical symbol for radium. You're going to be really, really interested. Oh, Adrian, don't worry about working ahead. Rocky says 5 countries, 5 pointed stars. Yeah, which would be a pentagram. Yeah, it's 6. So it's a hexagram, which is very big in alchemistry. Okay. Extended clips. Thank you for being here. Says the book The Two Babylons is an amazing book on this topic. Oh, I want to read it now. Snowman says just got back into the office working on my website. Leon says he's writing things down. And oh, Snowman wants to talk about sports ball. Okay, back to money. Okay. Okay, so tons to look at. Those are important things. You can go even deeper with that. I think when we are looking at the inception of the United States, that we have to look at the alchemists and we have to look at the Masons. Those are the important parts. Again, we're in the tinfoil section, so it's just going to keep getting weirder. All right, religion. I'm not going to get too deep into religion because I think this is something people can study on their own. People are very married to their religious dogma and their thoughts about God. So I just want to give you a few things to think about when it comes to symbols and religion. Okay. So the cross of Tau, okay, which makes me think of a t-shirt, but it doesn't have the top stick, right, of the cross. It's a capital T, but it is a cross. It is associated with the Sumerian sun god Tammuz, the Roman god Mithras, and the Greek god Attis, who all died and were resurrected. Coincidence, total coincidence. The Celtic cross, which is also called the sun cross, the wheel cross, or Odin's cross, none of which have anything to do with Christianity and were around before. The Ankh, again, doesn't have anything to do with Christianity and was around before in Egypt. The Ankh is the symbol of life. If the top, so it's the symbol of life, but then if you turn the top to a solid line, then it represents somebody's death, right? Some people say that the Ankh is the balance of all things, like the female is the circle, the male is the stem, you've got the line in between, but it could be the balance of all things, right? It could be what brings life, but that's what it represents. Below that, we have Bridget's cross, which is like a sigil of protection. Again, nothing to do with the religion that utilizes crosses, and keeps evil, fire, and hunger from homes. So people would put Bridget's cross on things. Then when Christianity in the form of the Catholic Church came through, they made Bridget a saint and co-opted Bridget's cross. So few things to think of when we talk about symbols. Okay. So, hi, Shelton. Thanks for being here. Okay. Few more things to think about. Again, if you want to do it on your own. Starting from the top, there's 4 pictures there, right? And these are all snakes and stems or trees or whatever. We have a caduceus. We have, is it called an orosco? I think it's the snake who bites its own tail. And it is around the tree of life. We have the symbol for EMS, which has a staff and a snake. And then we have a very blonde-haired Eve eating an apple off of a tree with a snake wrapped around it because the snake told her to. So those are all icons. They all seem like the same thing. Now, the interesting thing is when we look at the caduceus, which is the 2 snakes wrapped around the staff, that is to denote wisdom. In most all ancient cultures, snakes were guardians and they held all the knowledge. They had all the knowledge and wisdom and guarded the humans. They were the original egregores, I guess. The Aruska, what is that name? That's going to bug me. Somebody look that up. The snake who bites its own tail. I think it's I knew it wouldn't come to me. Oh, Rocky says, I see the radium alchemical symbol, but I can't make heads or tails of it. Okay, I may pull it up in just a second. Okay. The snake that bites its own tail protects all of life. It is the fulfillment of all, the everything, the never-ending circle, right? It is the holder, the watcher, the protector, right? So snakes are the watchers, the protectors. They have all of the knowledge. They are revered. Even to today, they are revered as having the utmost knowledge. Or is it a tree with a snake and an apple? So something to think about. Middle one is on the left-hand side is the alchemical hexagram, which is, so if you go, okay, let me show you. So it's two triangles, right? Like one is up, one is down. Oh, that is not what I wanted. There we go. Now I'm on a different view. Okay. If you look at this one, you will see water is down and fire is up. Earth is down and air is up, triangle-wise, okay? So if we go back here to religion, oh, you guys don't see it. Hold on. Let me get back to it. I didn't realize we lost it. Okay. Now, let me share it back. Ouroboros. Thank you. Not Orozco. We don't want that. Sorry. Ouroboros. That is totally correct. Okay. So the alchemical symbol, fire, they're triangles, right? Fire is up, water's down, air is up, earth is down. Okay. So the hexagram is the balance of all things, right? That's what it means, the balance of all things. So is it, from, hundreds of years BC, the hexagram, or is it the Star of David? And look how it made. That's two triangles, right? Is it, press the button. Is it an alchemical iconography, or is it Nation of Islam? It's things to think about. Because I didn't want to just pick on the people who use crosses. Let's pick on people who talk about snakes and trees and stars and moons and whatnots. Things to think about when we look at symbology, not just accepting the symbols. Okay. All right. All right. So I'm going to leave this right here. You all can look at it. Everything on the slide is factual with receipts that may end up on a Patreon because it for damn sure won't be here. Okay, so if marketing is used to manipulate our emotions and actions, Why wouldn't the government or religion or even things of which we have no knowledge also be manipulating our thoughts, feelings, motivations, actions, right? In fact, haven't those things been marketed to us, right? Government, religion, it's marketed to us, right? And in the same way, through that scarcity, social proof, authority, foot in the door, reciprocity, anchoring, loss aversion, emotional appeals, priming, decoy effect, framing, and gamification. Is that not at every service of every religion? Is that not in every political speech that we hear? We are being marketed to tell us what to believe, to guide our actions. So we need to ask ourselves, again, today's a pivot point, remember? We need to ask ourselves why we like what we like, why we value what we value. Like, why do I value that? Why do we think that's the right thing to do, to value it anyway? Why we do what we do? Who told you what to believe to be true? Who told you that? Does what you do or think or feel benefit someone else more than it benefits you? If so, maybe it's manipulation. We have been manipulated to do many things that we hide or hold in high value, like forgiving people who don't apologize, forgiving people who keep hurting us, right? Like the whole turning the other cheek. We view that as a positive character trait. But doesn't that benefit the other person much more than you? And then we're sort of manipulated into saying, well, it's going to make you feel better because you'll be able to let it go in the long run. No, you just literally forgave somebody who did something heinous to you, and they never even had to make up for it, apologize for it, ask for forgiveness, do anything. Yeah, they benefit, right? Going to work, working hard, working all day, working overtime, coming in on the weekend to work, taking on extra hours, taking on more work, being the most work hard, work hard, work hard. We have this like, well, that's a sign of high moral character. Well, okay, so you're working super hard like that for years and years, and you're tearing up your body and you're creating heart conditions and poor eating habits and bad physical health, and somebody else is making a lot of money. Possibly that's manipulation. Think about it. Like, humans lived on the earth without having a job or a 401k for like all the time up until certain people wanted to benefit off of other people's work. And here we are, right? But we've been taught that it's high moral character to work. And while you're working, pay taxes. They're going to charge you for working for them. Okay. So, Leon says I picked them all. Okay. So, who told you those things, right? Does it benefit somebody else? If it does, maybe it's manipulation. And you just might find out that you have not been the one in control. You have not had free will. You have not had autonomy. And it might be time for a pivot point. All right. Oh my gosh, almost 2 hours. Look at that. I knew it was going to be long. Woo. I knew it was going to be long. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about how I did the pivot point. Like, we're going to talk about the concept, right? And how it may be beneficial. And then we're going to get a little weird with it. And then we might get a little tinfoil hat with it. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you like that. Um, I like rabbit holes. So, I like all of it. Any research, you know what I mean? I'll go down all the rabbit holes. I just I find it all fascinating. Fascinating. Okay, so coming up Sunday is I'm changing the title to The Psychology of Decision Making, but it's going to be about cognitive dissonance, critical thinking, and zero sum theory. Kind of in the hopes to bring back more discourse in our conversation, not our conversations, but overarchingly in conversations, because people struggle with cognitive dissonance and critical thinking. And then also I was asked to touch on zero sum theory in that conversation, and I think it applies. It's apropos. Next Sunday, we're going to talk about the philosophy of happiness, what it is and how to get it. And then the Sunday after that is the impact of AI on human identity. So that one should be pretty daggum interesting, I think. Of course, I think all this stuff's interesting. I hope you guys do too. Okay. Shelton says, thank you, Maggie. I came in late, so I have to get on the replay wagon. Yeah, this builds up. We start with some simple things and it builds on itself as it goes. And then, we end up really weird. And if you guys are interested in this stuff and looking it up and going down those rabbit holes, feel free to take a screenshot of this final slide if you find that interesting at all. Nina likes it. Okay. Leon says, this is where I argue with people about letting it burn. It's no one's duty to have 2.1 children to a state that won't play nice. Yeah. I mean, however you want to respond to it. Me, I am moving more towards transcendentalism. Could you imagine if transcendentalism had one instead of abolition? Think about it. There was a whole transcendental movement, a whole abolition movement, and then a whole movement of people wanting to keep slavery as a practice in the United States. Could you imagine and transcendentalism said that abolitionists didn't go far enough. Abolition is how we ended up going back to black coats, okay? Because abolition was like, yeah, we're not going to do slavery, but we don't want anything to do with them. There wasn't really equality. Whereas transcendentalism says every human deserves the utmost amount of freedom to do what they do. So could you imagine if transcendentalism had one? Could you imagine the inventions and the technology and the things that we would have if everybody just had the space and ability to reach their full potential? Like that would be amazing. But you know what? It's never too late. It's like, planting a tree. Best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago. Second best time to plant a tree right now. So best time to have transcendentalism win was back then. Second best time right now. Okay. Rocky says, all of you should. Leon says, transcendentalism is here and alive. It never went away. Oh, see, I think there's a lot of people that think that way. I think there's a lot of people that think that way who didn't know that it was called transcendentalism. You know what I mean? But I think there are also people who would prefer to be that way. All they got to do is hear about it. So I think it's worth the shot. You know what I mean? Chef Mike says, every heart vibrates to that iron string. Oh, well, isn't that interesting that, we're talking about alchemists, and vibrating, and the heart is about feelings, and we're talking about iron. And what is the iron string? Hello. Go back to the symbol. And then it's Ralph Waldo Emerson, who is a transcendentalist. Like, isn't it interesting when things line up? Oh, Rocky says you have to read my message before that. Where'd it go? Let me find it. Oh, the only one I see it says Ouroboros or something. And then the next one is all of you should. Was it maybe even before that? Let me see. Hide a snowman. Radium alchemical symbol. Can't make heads or tails of it. For some reason, I'm not seeing it. I'm sorry, Rocky. Yeah, Chef Mike says Emerson changed my life. Yeah. You know, he was OG or whatever they call it, original transcendentalist. You know what I mean? And yeah. And Thoreau. You know what I mean? And the more you learn, and then to find out that Walden Pond was a stop on the Underground Railroad. Like, they weren't just talking the talk. They were doing some stuff, you know? Yeah. Oh. Rocky says we want to get really weird. Yeah. Okay. I mean, hopefully you found it interesting. Replay gang, hope you found it interesting. If you have questions or other directions or things you want me to talk about, some things may have to be on the Patreon. Just as a reminder, I have a free membership option on the Patreon, and I'm going to start putting some more original content in there. I don't have a ton of original content. It's more posting things up and what my thoughts are about it. But I'm probably going to be getting deeper into some of these things, maybe like what that last slide says. So there's the free option that's in there. You don't have to pay to be a patron of Patreon. Chef Mike says self-reliance and Walden are game changers. Everyone should read them. I love it. Love it. Okay, everybody enjoy your Wednesday. It's gotten very late. Hope everybody sleeps well. If I don't see you this coming Sunday, I hope to see you next Wednesday for another pivot point. Have a good night. Bye.